Hello and welcome to The Art of Aging, which is part of the Abundant Aging podcast series from United Church Homes. On this show, we look at what it means to age in America and in other places around the world with positive and empowering conversations that challenge, encourage, and inspire everyone everywhere to age with abundance. Our guest today is Dr. Emily Roberts, and I'm so excited to have Emily on the show. She is an associate professor at Oklahoma State University, where her work has been defined under the theme of, and I love this, environmental gerontology. I want to be that when I grow up. She has a master's of science in gerontology and a PhD in architectural studies with a focus on the intersection between environment and behavior. Over the last decade, she has had a particular focus on researching the aging process and how it relates to one's physical environment. This broad lens allows her to address the well-being and care of older adults and their families from several perspectives, in particular, the provision of healthy environments, technologies, and supportive organizations through integrated programming systems and interventions. In addition to her role as the associate professor in the College of Education and Human Sciences, she is the director of the NIH-sponsored Human Environmental Factors Lab. Everyone needs an acronym, so that acronym is HEFL. An interactive design lab which supports the identification of opportunities for improving quality of life for vulnerable populations and their caregivers, both within the home and in care communities. But it doesn't stop there. She also serves on the editorial board of the Journal of Aging and Environment, is the Environmental Gerontology Network chair for the Environmental Design Research Association, and has co-edited a book, which I have here, called Redesigning the Continuum of Care for Older Adults, The Future of Long-Term Care Settings, which is published in 2023. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be here today.
Awesome. Well, two things. First of all, I want to put a plug in for our Ruth Frost Parker Center, which is the sponsor of this podcast series. Ruth Frost Parker Center is United Church Homes' thought leadership arm. And check it out on www.unitedchurchhomes.org/Parker-Center. More information about our research, our thought leadership, our annual symposium, and with our primary mission of ending ageism. Second plug, I'm going to hold up Emily's terrific book that she co-edited, which is Redesigning the Continuum of Care for Older Adults, The Future of Long-Term Care Settings. And I just took just a couple of the subjects that are in this book, anything from bridging the digital divide, smart aging in place, and the future of gerotechnology, love that term, a theory of creating a concept of at-homeness across the long-term care continuum, and of course, what she has written about, and what we're going to be talking about today, which is adaptive reuse. You know, these concepts of how can we adaptively reuse our existing assets for things like dementia programs, memory care, and things of that nature. So you're an environmental gerontologist, which, as we said, looks at how one's relationship with both the undesigned and the designed world changes as we age. Is that a good way of explaining it? I mean, how does our relationship?
Yeah, I think that hits it right on the head. Absolutely. I think it's the confluence of the individual in the environment that they're in, whether they're at home or they're in long-term care, memory care, adult daycare. How does the physical environment and the social environment support that person? You know, we look at design for children, right? And design for young adults. And so this is really focused on a population that is growing, as we know, by leaps and bounds. So by 2050, there will be more older people than there will be young people. So where does that put us in terms of a society prepared with our programs and services and the built environment? So yeah, environmental gerontology is really a lot of things. It's social psychology, it's environmental psychology, it's design, and a lot of times it's just common sense, thinking what would I want in my environment, right? And sort of narrowing that us and them perspective to what do we need as an aging population.
I love that. And I think my mind kind of goes to two different places right now. One is, I think, the overall concept of universal design. I've heard, and if you talk to the folks at IDEO or some of those labs, there's a terrific documentary that came out about, 10, 15, 20 years ago called Objectified, all about universal design, and they were talking about garden shears. And when IDEO designs garden shears, they design it for the person that would be using, like a handyman that would be using them, 2 hours a day versus someone who'd be using it 5 times a year. So if you design for the extreme, they say, then the middle will take care of itself. Do you think that that's kind of a through line when we're talking about design for older people?
Yeah, I mean, I think that universal design is exactly what it says, right? It's for everyone, so it's not for a specific population. But if we design for everyone, from the mom who's pushing her stroller or has her arms full, to the older adult that might be using a walker or a wheelchair, then we know we've covered our basis. And so if our not only our buildings but our cities are and sidewalks and street intersections are set up for everyone, then we know that we're working in the right direction for universal design. It's similar to Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA standards, but a little bit different in that it's not dictated by law, right? It's a choice. I'm choosing to incorporate these pieces into my designs, and this is what I talk to my students about. But for my students to be thinking about, okay, what will I need? What will I want? What would I want to see? Do I want something that looks very institutional or sort of brutalist, or do I want something that's going to be aesthetically pleasing? So in the design world, those are the choices that we have. Universal design is not rocket science, but doing it very well and integrating it into the larger, schema, then yes, that's where the creativity comes in.
And Emily, we're here to talk about the title of this podcast is Dementia-Friendly City Centers, New Models in Adaptive Reuse and Dementia Care. But if you just be patient for me, I'd love to just talk about one more thing before we get into that particular subject, and that's this idea of our progression in aging. There's sort of our mental state and our physical state. And I'm wondering if you have any insights as to, because we talk to a lot of people about aging. And one of the through lines that we hear very often is that I still think I'm in my 40s. I still think I'm in my 30s. I still think I'm in this, except now my body is doing things that are disappointing me. Mm-hmm. Is there a design philosophy or something that you see as helpful as we design spaces for older people that really provide that, I don't know, more of an emotional support or something as somebody deals with as their body disappoints them, I guess. Is that question making sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think being proactive and mindful about where I want to live, as I age is a good start. Yeah, it's really nice to be in it, a big 2-story house with a, huge yard. That's great. But there's going to be a point when I know I'm not going to be able to take care of that. I'm not going to be able to take the stairs. So just being proactive in your thought process with your spouse or your family, thinking through, again, where do I want to be and what do I want to see as I'm aging? And we can't all have everything that we want in our environment, but we can certainly make some small steps, right? Like, pre-setting up the kinds of cabinets that can be adjusted in case I do have to be in a wheelchair part of the day, or, cabinets that raise and lower, the way that we can open and close doors. There's so many different factors. Unfortunately, in our built environment, there's standards, and the standards are probably going to keep things at a certain cost. And there's this perception that if I take things outside of those boundaries, that it's going to be a lot more expensive. And I don't think it's more money, but it's a little bit more thought, right?
Yeah.
Thinking ahead and having the people in your life, maybe if you know someone who's in design or has done those kinds of things to their home, talk to them about it. Just find out what did you do? Oh, well, we had some extra support built into our walls. So when we do need handrails in our bathroom, we don't have to go digging into the wall. We know where it is, and we can just put those things up.
Yeah, and I think how we've dealt with it when we've modified our home. We have dual railings down the stairwells. We have the blocking for the bars and all the rest of it, and then just going back to kind of the universal design element. The same grab bar in the bathroom could be a little shelf at some point for your or I find that I'm using those dual. It's going up and down the stairs. I feel more confident and supported just where I am today. So I'm hoping that we'll see more solutions in that universal design format where it's good for today. It's also good for tomorrow. I think people are being very, very clever
Absolutely.
there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But we're talking about agency and people advocating for themselves and so on. But the really where you focused your energy is where that may not be the case. People that have cognitive decline, people serving people with dementia. Why have you become so passionate about that particular area of gerontology?
Well, I think there's a term out there somewhere that everybody becomes a gerontologist at some point in their life, when they've gone through a journey with somebody that's very important to them, which is exactly what happened to me. So a dear person in my life, was on that journey with Alzheimer's, and she didn't really have anybody that was there to support her. Now, this was at a time when I was kind of raising my family and doing other things. So my focus was not in care for, memory care or dementia care, but I was so connected to her that I really started to understand what the process was for an individual living with cognitive decline and the impact and how their physical environment can really impact their ability to do the things that they want to do through their day. I saw it firsthand. If I had not had that experience, I don't know what I would be doing. I have a design background, but so having that experience drove me. I mean, literally, I was driven to find out more, particularly after she passed away, just about what the connection was between the person's abilities or inabilities to function in an environment and how we can create environments that can bring back some of those competencies. So that person environment fit, that's Pal Lawton, the rock star of environmental gerontology, who was so important in the writings around the idea of the person in their environment. So we've seen probably some of the images of somebody maybe that's living in a very large institutional setting. They have a very large dining room. They feel sort of, not very comfortable sitting there. Maybe they have a palsy or a tremor. They're not comfortable. It's loud. So maybe they stop eating. They stop going to the dining area. And what I saw with my family member was when I moved her into a very small home-like setting, which basically was a home, right, with a kitchen, living room, dining room, and bedrooms, it was the familiarity of a kitchen that she could sit down and watch somebody preparing her meals and smell the food being made, maybe help, mix something up, sit down for a cup of coffee. She regained that sort of sense of herself that, I want to be interactive. I want to sit down and have a cup of coffee and maybe something to eat. So yes, the environment does impact us. And really, so that experience with her and watching that process and going through that journey really sort of set me on my path.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so much there too. So you went through this experience, and I'm sorry that I mean that's certainly a very emotional and taxing experience, and we hear that just with the whole journey around cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, and things like that. And it's interesting to sort of reflect on the models you saw here. You saw large institutions, you saw smaller states. There's kind of like a Goldilocks thing, depending on who people are, because small things can mean a lot. I mean, you're talking about one's cognitive decline. You got to think that you probably know you're in cognitive decline. You realize that new things are stimulating you in different ways, and that affects your ability to engage to whatever. So it's finding the right place. I mean, because you're going to reach a point where you can't be on your own anymore, and a lot of people have to turn to institutions. So finding the right fit is just really, really important, right?
I call it a care setting.
Yes.
Or a place to live. So yeah, I mean, yes, for many families that are living with somebody with cognitive decline, the work is there, and they've done the best that they can, and I wasn't necessarily in her life all that time, but I was sort of in and out, and I saw what was going on. It's okay to have to, for the caregiver to say, I can't do this anymore, but with that caveat but I'm the best person to do it for my family member or the person that I love. And that's such a hard decision to give up the control of making sure that this person is safe and well taken care of. Unfortunately, with the way that our care system is set up, yes, there are some lovely, wonderful places, not always affordable for everybody. So for instance, in the case of my aunt, the person I'm talking about, she didn't have the funds to go to a very nice place where she was going to be comfortable. What her options were, in my view, just are not an option, right? And when I saw what her options were, I said, no, that's not going to happen. And I moved her to another state to be close to me. But so our care system was set up sort of in the 50s and the 60s, at the time when, we were Medicare and Medicaid were sort of coming on board, and we were, I think as a society, we're trying to do our best by saying, okay, if you can't take care of yourself, we'll take care of you. But that ended up with a very institutional type of setting, right? Where it's sort of based on the medical model of care. We're going to make you better. We're going to take care of you, which takes away everything about me. If I'm coming into that setting, it has nothing to do with me, right? I can't fold my socks. I like folding socks. I can't cook. I can't have my dog. Very institutional. There's no normalcy to the sort of traditional medical model. It's, we're going to take care of you. Well, in a lot of cases, somebody living with cognitive decline don't necessarily need to be taken care of. They just maybe need some extra support. So what I've been looking at, and with my students and with other colleagues, is how to replicate the kind of place where I can continue to do the things that are normal in my day. If I want to fold socks, well, gosh darn it, I can do it. If I want to help cook a meal, or if I want to take a walk, if I want to go pet a dog, if I want to go to the grocery store. So the normalcy of the setting, really, for my aunt, being put in a place where it was a much smaller setting and it was very home-like, she sort of reconnected with herself. I guess that's the best way to put it. So that normalcy brought back the things that she liked to do, like sitting and having a cup of coffee and a piece of cake. What we've been looking at is trying to do that on a larger scale. So looking at the idea of, how do we create a setting where somebody can spend their day, so it's not just inside, being able to go outside and do the things that we like to do on our own, right? With that sense of autonomy. Yeah, I want to go outside and take a walk, or, see how cold it is outside. And I think that is one of the things that has been so impactful for me to see when I've been around our country and also in other countries, is the difference between a setting where somebody is allowed to be themselves and have a normal sort of pace of their day, versus when their day is dictated to them. This is when you do this. This is when you do that. And by the way, you can't do that. And I don't know about you, but if I'm going to be put into a place that has nothing to do with me, and somebody locks the door and says I can't go outside, I'm going to be at the door shaking that door to say, let me out, right? And we see that as some maladaptive behavior. Well, no, that's pretty normal, right? If I'm told that I can't do the things that are important to me, well, gosh darn it, we need to change that, right? So that's really what my focus has been over these past several years with my students.
It rings so true, because you're talking about people who have a feeling of loss of agency, a loss of control. How do we give them a feeling of agency and control back? You're talking about a sick care system, not a healthcare system in this country, a sick care system that treats you as if you are sick. You have a disease, but you've had the privilege to go to other countries, within
Mhm.
their healthcare system, their models where perhaps, the cognitive decline is more of a condition than a sickness. And you
Absolutely.
have seen these things kind of. Can you tell us a little bit about what sort of? I mean, I know that there's things in the Netherlands, and we've heard a lot about
Yeah.
Japan, but
Yeah. So
how do you see it? How do you see it play out there?
different medical system, different funding organizations. So yeah, I had the opportunity pretty early on in my time at OSU to travel to the Netherlands to visit the dementia village that was built and opened in 2009. It sits on 4 acres, and it's basically sort of an indoor outdoor village. It's called a dementia village. So it has the space, has the housing in that tiny home or small house model with living, kitchen, dining room for small groups of people, 6 to 8 people. A lot of those households, but it then also has the amenities, a place to go and go grocery shopping and get my hair done and go to a movie and sit outside by a fountain. The 4 acres are developed in this particular dementia village in by 7 different landscape architects, so that each of these sort of outdoor areas has a different feeling, different flora and fauna, different experience. So if I'm taking a walk, I will have sort of those different kinds of experiential things that I come across through my day, which is what we do in our lives, right? If I want to sit down and look at the water or watch the birds, I can do that. Um, so that Dementia Village was the first of its kind to say, okay, it's okay if you want to do whatever you want because you have, like you said, the agency. Because you have cognitive decline does not take away the person that you are, and you have the ability to come and go as you want. So I've actually visited that site twice. Had an opportunity the second time to sit down with um, the staff and the people who had really developed the programming and found out just a little bit more about their thinking and how they were able to sort of move that needle to such a positive experience for somebody that's living with dementia, right? And I think the number one thing was sort of what I started with is sort of the ethics of care. What would you want? If you're sitting down with a policymaker or a designer or a family member, trying to determine what is best for this family member, your loved one, well, what would you want? What would you want to see? What are the things that you would want to do with your day? Those are the kind of questions that we ask of other people, but for some reason we don't ask of the people that are living with dementia or their family members, because for some reason the concept of dementia says, okay, well, it's risk over autonomy. You can't do that because it's too risky. But if you don't have dementia, if you're 80 years old, like George Bush, you can go skydiving and it's, hey, go, go, go. But for some reason, if you've been told that you have cognitive decline, you know, Katie barred the door. You can't go outside. So that dementia village has brought forth many other dementia villages. I visited another one in Denmark, and then another one last summer in Oslo, Carpe Diem. Just wonderful places to be. So it doesn't have to be a place that's for people with dementia. It's just a nice place to live, right?
Yeah.
So it's nice housing, nice outdoor amenities, nice flow between the indoors and the outdoors, easy to access, and having that freedom to do what I want. I don't think it's so much a reminiscence thing that um, these things are brought back because of something that they see. It's the feeling, right? It's that
Yeah.
sense of place, that sense of place that we don't get when we're in a traditional, medical model. Because the sense of place when you're in a traditional medical model is hospital, not home or not
That's
community.
that's the thing. What goes through my mind now is that cognitive decline, arguably, is probably one of the most human of conditions, of diseases, or what have you. Yet the response to treatment in this country seems to be to take kind of the humanity out of it, to be very clinical. And the models you're describing, really just seems to kind of maintain those human things: agency, choice, the ability to enjoy something spontaneous, like just looking at the water and seeing whatever moves around you. I mean, those just sorts of very holistic concepts just seem so, yeah, at least in the history of how we've dealt with it in this country, it
Mhm.
just seems to be so absent, you
Well, and I
know?
don't think it's right and wrong, but it's just sort of the degrees of things. Yeah, yeah, people need to be safe and secure in their environment, right? How do we get there? Well, we can create an environment that's safe and secure, but also allows for, agency and autonomy. It's again, it's not rocket science. We design large scale projects every day in the built environment. So I think taking away the all the question marks and just saying, what would you want? If
What
you
would
knew
you
that you were
want?
going to be living there for the next 20 years, what would you want? What would amenities would you want to have? What would you want to be able to do? Who would you want to be able to see? Um, and then I think we could, as a society, it becomes a we, right? This is a
Yeah,
we problem. It's not an us and them problem.
exactly. So the whole thing about what would you want? What would you want? I mean, that's just even for people that are not under cognitive decline, that maybe choosing or may need more help or whatever. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, what is it? I always like to say, you don't take your pills because you like how they taste, right? What is the motivator that wants you to stay adherent and stay on your plan? Um, this question has been in my head ever since you talked about the Netherlands. In these countries, is generally cognitive decline diagnosed earlier than in the United States? And when people move into these types of environments, do you see them moving in perhaps at a little bit of an earlier stage of cognitive decline? Or are they moving into these environments when maybe they can't
My
manage themselves?
understanding is that there are multiple levels of care, right? Or you were given a certain level of diagnosis of dementia, and so you will be um, a different kind of setting will be opened up for you if you have mild cognitive decline versus if you are late stage Alzheimer's disease. That's a really good question, and I think it begs more conversation because why not have just a general population of people that might be able to support each other, mentor each other, be helpful to each other, along with the people who are there as the care staff.
Right.
I know in the three um, care sites that I visited, the volunteer networks were very, very robust. And the family members or people from the community coming in and helping out with some of the clubs or taking people out for a double bike ride or you know um, so there's nothing to say that volunteer network can't come from within as well, and which I think probably in some of those care settings it does, right? That the the ability to volunteer and help out can be a wonderful gratifying thing to be able to do in my day. So yeah, I from what I have seen, and I haven't seen all that much, but what I've seen, there are sort of levels of care, and I think that the dementia villages that I've visited were for people that were probably in a little bit more late stage dementia.
Sure, 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 sure. And we're learning so much about the disease. We're learning so much about these conditions. And as you said, I mean, this is staring us in the face because we're going to see probably a 10x increase in demand and all as our society does enter this remarkable period of demographic change where we are going to be going much older. No, I don't think that there are any silver bullets. We touched on reminiscence therapy. We touched on other things, but I love this way that you're thinking about environmental adaptation for an aging population. We know that you've come up with your life framework to really kind of describe that. Can you share a little bit more about your active aging for life framework model?
Sure. Well, active aging was termed by the World Health Organization, I think back in the 90s, about sort of flipping the idea of sort of the negative way of thinking about aging to the positive, right? So, we have a choice. We have a choice how we are going to be mindful about our progress across the lifespan. So, active aging for life is something that we developed at my university with other faculty and colleagues, with the LIFE acronym being longevity, independence, fitness, and engagement. And it's a great program with 4 modules, those 4 modules for older adults, but we have created sort of an intergenerational aspect to it. We are bringing together college-age students and older adults to talk about the topics of longevity. The blue zones, lots to talk about there. What are the blue zones doing that we could do too? Independence, and the idea that independence is very connected to interdependence. So we want to be independent, but we may need to have extra help. So that's that interdependence. Fitness, the idea of both physical fitness and cognitive fitness, and those connections between the two, and then engagement, and how things like volunteerism or lifelong learning are impactful. So we have brought together for a couple of studies older adults and college-age students to talk about these things at the same table. And then following our first sort of round, we decided to take some of those people who had been through the program, so the 2 generations, and take it to our local high school. So we had 3 generations at the table having conversations about these things. And so actually, I just received a grant from the Next 50 initiative in Denver, Colorado to take that bigger, right? So now we are actually recruiting for life leader teams of older adults, college-age students who will be trained in the active aging for life modules, and they will then take the program to 6 rural high schools. So I'm super excited about it because it just hits a lot of different things at the same time, right? I think the big thing about it is it's an easy to remember and understand framework, right? Active aging for life. It's something that happens throughout the lifespan. So we're not just talking about older people, we're not just talking about young people. Again, we're talking about us. And what are the things that we can do to be mindful in the aging process? So that's active aging. And again, an enormous amount of literature on active aging and a lot of different programs. I think ours may be one of the few that create this sort of intergenerational piece for people to have the conversations with somebody that they might not, a 17-year-old is not normally going to be sitting down with a 70-year-old to talk about, how they got through a hard or stressful time in their life. And what a wonderful opportunity.
Well, first of all, I want to shout out to Peter Caldas and over at Next 50 and his team and for funding excellent opportunities like this. I love the intergenerational angle that you describe. I'm not sure if you know the work of Skye Bergman.
Yes.
So
I've spoken with her many times.
Yeah, so we're going to have Skye on an episode of the podcast coming up. And, we are at United Church Homes through our pastoral or spiritual care team actually launching some of these intergenerational initiatives. So I hope we get a chance to work with your framework and program at some point. But I love this idea, active aging is ageless, is what you're saying here. And just bringing
we're all on that, right? We're all on the trajectory. We're just at sort of different points of it. And what can I learn from an older adult? So I also teach the class to students every spring. And so I have more time with them, and it's just the college students. But so they go through the class, and then they develop their own module, and they take it to the high school. So it's so similar but different. But one of the projects or papers that they write in my class is See Me at 70. So here we have a 20-year-old who is asked to project. Where do I want to be? How will I get there? Who are the people that are going to be in my life? It's fiction, right? But it's fiction based on reality of who they are and what their belief systems and values are, the people that are important to them. All of those things factor in. And so they can either write a letter to themselves in the future, or they can write a letter from their future back to their 20-year-old self and say, we did a great job. So I think it starts to get some wheels turning about, oh, okay, so I have control over this, right? My
Yes.
life doesn't just happen to me. There are things that I can do along the way that will impact my do I get to that beautiful age of 70, and have a sense of self-worth and wisdom.
And importantly, and we've talked about this on the show, many times, it sort of helps to kill the ageist tropes that we find here in Western society, whether it's going to be just a birthday card that basically says, well, you're over the hill now, to any number of other things you see. And then comparatively, and especially as you see these things as you travel, other countries where, especially non-Western countries, where we see the relationship with aging more towards wisdom, towards growth, towards a sort of societal benefit, a net benefit for having older people around. So it must be
Absolutely.
just
So
great to see
where
those
did we
barriers fall.
lose that? I don't get it. We just, for some reason, I mean, I'm overstating that because there are wonderful close knit families, but when I do go to some care centers where the person has been basically left there, there's no one
Yes.
there that's interacting with them. It's like, how does that happen? It,
And
it
I think a
boggles the
lot of the
mind.
people that may come to this country and may work in those settings may also think, how does this happen? So
Yeah.
I just, you're doing amazing work by breaking down these barriers. And I've got 5 more podcasts I'd love to do with you, Emily, but we're going to, we need to move on to kind of we always ask our guests 3 questions about their experience with aging. I think I was reflecting on this too, because we've been lucky enough to have guests in their 20s. We've been lucky to have guests in their 70s. And when people answer these questions, it's always interesting to see the through lines with the commonalities in the answers, and also where people may be in their lives at that moment. So I hope that you're okay with us asking that of you. But before we do that, where can people find you? What would you like to share? Find out more about your work? Where can people find you?
Well, I've been working on a project with students called the Dementia-Friendly City Center, and there's a fair amount of literature, and I've on the project, and there was an article in the New York Times that talked about it, and on National Public Radio. So I think if you just if you're interested in dementia and dementia care and new models of care, the Dementia Friendly City Center will probably pop up. And we're looking at adaptive reuse of very large commercial spaces that are closed. So what does that look like? Well, you'll see if you look it up. But in the book that you held up, there's a chapter about the idea of an 800,000 square foot closed mall and what creativity can do, and in thinking about ways where we can create normalcy. We're not talking about putting housing in a mall. We're talking about opening up the mall for places, amenities and programs and services, and plugging in housing sort of at different levels of care need, and those kinds of things. And so it's something that's very exciting. It keeps me going. And we could have a whole nother podcast on that.
We could, and there's a lot of malls out there that could use it. I just think it's terrific. But into our 3 questions. Oh, and by the way, the book is Redesigning the Continuum of Care for Older Adults: The Future of Long-Term Care Settings, published by Springer. Please check it out, pick it up. It's got some great content in it. So, Emily, question number 1 about aging. Okay. When you think about how you yourself have aged, what do you think has changed about you or grown with you that you really like about yourself?
I think, and I don't think it's something that came to me just like off the top of my head. It's sort of being in the academic world and working with young adults and talking to them, in my classes about how much control we have over our lives. So I think that that's something that I really think about a lot. Is talk about the journey and putting together the jigsaw puzzle of life, and I feel like we have the capacity to form that puzzle the way, however we want. We get to make the pieces, right? We get to determine what's important to us and how we fit those things together. And so I think that sort of flexibility and saying, okay, well, this isn't working. I'm going to try this over here, and sort of push things together that way to be the person that you want to be, at 60 something years old, which I am, that's a beautiful thing. And not feel like you have to be sort of pushed in a certain direction, but letting life inspire you and allow you to make the changes that you need to change to be not necessarily happy, but fulfilled.
That's terrific. And I'm so glad that you're able to share that with your students. That's awesome. But now on to question number 2, which is, what has surprised you the most about you as you've aged?
I can still get up in the morning and do my work. My mom lived well into her 80s and was just vital and, cooking for people that needed extra help and those kinds of things. And the flip side, my father died very early at 56. So I take nothing for granted.
Yes. Yes. And it's interesting, that sort of flows into our third question here, is that it's really about those inspirations. Is there someone that you've met or somebody who's been in your life that has really set a good example for you in aging? Like somebody, we like to say aging with abundance at United Church Homes, but maybe somebody that's inspired you to age with abundance.
Well, I would actually have to go back to my dad because, I was 20 when he passed away, and I now know more about him as I've aged and saw what he's missed. He was 56. And he was a scientist, and he as I was growing up, teenager, would try to talk to me about his passions and the things that he was working on, and he was describing this scientific stuff about putting memory into these really thin chips of silicon, and I'm like, what are you talking about, Dad? I want to go to the beach with my friends. I wasn't connecting with what he was telling me. Well, he was a software engineer. He was developing the first silicon chips, and he died in 1980, and he had just gotten his first handheld pocket calculator. The advent of the personal computer, the big changeover, had not happened yet. And when I think about that, about how important his work was through his life, his somewhat short life, but important, that he never saw the fruition of his work, but it was still important work. And so that to me is my inspiration for the aging process. Is there's no reason to just stop and shut down because I've reached a certain age. Whether or not I see any of these things come to fruition that I'm passionate about, they're still important.
I love that, and I've said this on other shows, and I'm inspired by my neighbor Jenny, who's in her mid 80s, and she's got a bumper sticker on her car, and it says "Curiosity never retires." And I really hope that'll be my inspiration for aging.
Absolutely, yeah. What's around the next corner?
I just love it. Well, Emily, thank you so much for spending the time with us and for educating our listeners. We loved having you as a guest on the show. Once again, if you're learning, please Google Dementia-Friendly City Centers. The idea of adaptive reuse. Emily and her colleagues, her team are working on that, and it's going to be just sort of amazing learnings. Again, Redesigning the Continuum of Care for Older Adults, the Future of Long-Term Care Settings, is the book. Emily's got some great content in that, as well as editing it, issued by Springer. But most importantly, thank you to our listeners. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of The Art of Aging, which is part of the Abundant Aging podcast series from United Church Homes. And we want to hear from you. I mean, what's been your experience with supporting the care of somebody with cognitive decline? How do you feel about this idea of advocacy, of just the ethics of care that surrounds somebody being personal themselves? What would you like to see on future episodes? Just please, get with us at abundantagingpodcast.com. We're also on YouTube under United Church Homes, so please subscribe there. And please find out more about the Ruth Frost Parker Center through our website, www.unitedchurchhomes.org/Parker-Center. Emily, again, thank you for being a great guest on the show.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And to our listeners, we hope that you'll tune in again for another great guest. Right. Bye for now.